Welcome to Guy Code, a podcast dedicated to imparting dad wisdom to my son, with your host, Koji Steven Sakai, and friends.
Alrighty, welcome. I'm Koji, and this is episode number 25. So I wanted to impart all of my wisdom to my son, but of course, he already thinks he knows more than me. So instead of trying to tell him now and having it go in one ear and out the other ear, I've decided to record all my advice here and my friends' advices in the hopes that just maybe when he's ready, he'll listen to my advice in the future and not make the same mistakes I did. So I'll bring on guests to impart their advice as well. And that's why I brought on my friend, Adam Chau. Hi, Adam.
Hey, how's it going, Koji?
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, you're in Minnesota, so I know that's kind of the epicenter of craziness for the last 2 months or so. So I definitely feel what's everything that's going on. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you? What do you do?
So I would say my name is Adam Chau. Thanks again for being on. I'm a blogger, writer. I do online activism and kind of on the ground as well too, when I can. And then, as a day job, I'm a software developer and engineer, architecture and design. So, I'm kind of into both technology and art at the same time. And so I think those two blend themselves well together. As you mentioned, I'm out in Minnesota. So I'm in the Twin Cities. I used to live in Minneapolis and then moved out to St. Paul maybe 5 years or so ago. But you always kind of travel, between the different cities.
Yeah. Well, why don't we, today we're going to be talking about general life advice. And so why don't you get us started on your first piece of advice you have?
Okay. And so I put these down in Notepad++, so I wouldn't forget these. And as I look these over. So I think the first piece of advice, as I was kind of thinking about this, I think this is probably one of my top ones. And this is what I would say kind of, to my daughter as well too, as she gets older. So she's going to be about 5. And I think kind of some of those same things, which is, and so this one is, you don't have to be number one all the time.
Well, that's not Asian, dude.
being number one is okay. Like, you can be in the top 20, you can be in the top 100, and it is relative to what you do, your environment, and I think, what you really want to accomplish. And absolutely, I think that's a tough one, right? You don't always have to be number one, but I think it's true. There's always, you can be in the top 3 and you can still get a medal. You can be in the top 10 and you can still be in the prize money, or you can still get exposure. Is it okay to be a Fortune 500 company? Sure. You don't have to be number one though as well.
That's interesting. Okay. That's like the opposite of what I tell my son, I think, because, I'm very much into like believing that you have to push yourself to be a number one. And I think what's interesting about kind of the whole tiger mom and tiger dad thing is that it's as Asians or Asian Americans, one of the things that makes us different than a lot of other groups is that we have high expectations as a community. Like, it's not just like you're going to go to college, right? It's like, no, you're going to go to Harvard, or you're going to go to like this top 5 university. And so what's interesting when you look at other communities is, like, I've talked to other parents, even like nice neighborhoods. Like I live in South Pass, which is a relatively nice neighborhood. And I talk to like Caucasian parents, and they're like, I hope my kid goes to college. And, I'm like, what? I want my kid to go to a top 10 university, which is better than the college I went to, and also better than my wife's college. She went to Johns Hopkins. I think where people go wrong, and to your advice, I think where people go wrong for Asians is that they withhold the love if they don't achieve it. I think it's okay to have high expectations to try to go for number one. But if you're like number 3, you're great still. If you're number 5, you're great. If you're 10, you're great. It's just a lot of like our parents. I actually shouldn't speak for your parents, but my parents and parents I know, they're like, I don't love you anymore because you're not at Harvard University. But for me, it's like, no, I want my kid to reach for that. And if he ends up at UCLA, that's cool, right? Like, I'm not gonna like hate him. Or if he's not a president but he's a senator, that's amazing, right? There's only 100 senators out there.
Absolutely. Exactly. And I think you kind of hit on that. There's nothing wrong with shooting for number one. There's nothing wrong to be a leader in your field, and you should push. And, I push my daughter. I have her teachers push, kind of my daughter and stuff like that. And then I think from an immigrant mentality, you do have opportunity of America, opportunity of US. And that's what I heard kind of when I grew up, America is still the best. You can still have opportunity and forget about what it does, right? To a certain extent, it's that kind of half and half piece where, yeah, you get opportunity. Not everybody likes you. Everybody has expectations of you. If you just shut your mouth, do your thing, you know what I mean? You're going to be kind of good. And so I think I like the way that you phrase that as far as maybe not giving the love, in that sort of way. At the same time, I'm a dad, I'm a stepdad. And so, a total of 7 kids, that I've helped kind of worked with right throughout time and throughout the last decade since I've been with my wife.
Yeah.
It's a lot of, it's a decent amount of kids, and you kind of see, how they go from, maybe age, and it's been like from 4, all the way up now. Some of them are like 26, and so kind of where they are. And I think though too, it's different for different communities within the Asian American community, right? Yeah. For different folks. And like, if you, depending upon your parents and your things, getting to college, no matter what college that is, right? Yeah. That can be a huge step, getting out and at least kind of trying, to me, is a big thing. I think there's a piece where you kind of go back and forth with tiger parenting, so to speak, and we can be tough, or at least I can be tough. Other Asian parents I know can be tough, but I think some of the different communities, some of the different parents, depending upon your background or depending upon maybe what you went through, you may temper that a little bit too. Like, I don't know about you, but I've had some of those proud parenting moments in life where I kind of go, ooh, maybe that was a little too, maybe I shouldn't have yelled so much on that one, or maybe I could have taken a step back, right? Yeah. I think every parent has that.
Of course.
And you do, because you don't want to necessarily be, like, you look at your own childhood, you look at how you were raised and reared, and then you kind of say to yourself, oh, wait, but I don't want to do that. Yeah. I don't want to go that far. I don't need to, like, flick my child all the time. I don't need to, chuck stuff at them all the time or something like that. And so but I do believe, and it's a part of too, though, I think some of this attitude of me, kind of during COVID and coronavirus, which is, oh, it's about me. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's okay. And I'm just going to focus on me, and I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get ahead. Yeah. And I think that's kind of more of the point, maybe from kind of some of that advice, which is, do you want to step over people to be number one, or are you fine doing it maybe the way that you think you should do it, ethically and morally, to get up to number 5, to be one of those 100 senators?
Yeah, no, and that's really interesting, because it's funny, because I had before this COVID thing, I remember I had a meeting with somebody, and I told them my goal in Hollywood was not to screw people over intentionally. And it was like a revelation to this person, because I was like even just putting out that's my goal, is that I'm trying to do everything as honestly and good as I can. I mean, sometimes people get screwed over and I can't really do anything about it, but when it's not like intentional, right? And I think that's a really good point to think about other people, And the other thing that I do, as a parent, one of the things I think is really important is learning how to lose. To your point, like, it's okay to be, because that's how you learn, that's how you get better. I think one of my favorite, I think I mentioned this on every episode, but my favorite inspirational speaker is this guy named Billy Alsbrook. And what he talks about is, he talks a lot about how, you shouldn't be called a winner until you lose, because anybody could keep going when they're winning. Like, anybody could do that. That's easy. But until you lose and you come back, that's when you should be called a winner, because that's what it takes a champion in order to lose and fight your way back to win. And I think that's one of the things that my son does is jujitsu. He's actually really good at jujitsu. And, the first tournament he went to, he got 4th place, and he didn't get a medal. It was the first time he didn't get a medal. And he was very sad about it. And I was explaining, you wanted a medal, that last fight that you could have won, you would have got 3rd place, you would have got a medal, but you lost. And so, what do you have to do next time to win? And I think that to me, it's an important lesson that for kids to understand, is that, that not everyone wins, that you have to fight, and you have to play, and you have to go hard, and that it's okay to lose. It's like, I don't love my son less that he lost, but it's like a learning lesson. It's like, like when after that loss, I talked to him about, like, look at yourself in practice. Like, you look how you're messing around, look how you're doing this, look how you're doing that, look how the competition was different at practice. Because at practice, he's the best. He could beat everybody in his academy, his age. And, it's like, well, yeah, but now how do you take that to the next level? How do you go to the next tournament and win? How do you go to the next tournament and win? How do you get better? How do you go from third place to second place? And, anyway, so.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. I think that's and I think, like you said, learning how to lose, not getting kind of everything that you want, I think are some of those core fundamental things that you have to learn to deal with. And I think the generation before us, especially in the generations before us,
yeah,
kind of knew that and they had to deal with that too.
Yeah.
And I think I think it's a good lesson to have, because you won't win all the time. You will come up against things. And I think, you talk about the time right now up here in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities too, as well. You're not always going to win. You have to keep on going. It's kind of these little ripples, right, that make these big effects too, as well.
Yeah.
And so I truly believe that that's one of those things, because I think you can, just because you didn't get first, just because you didn't get second, just because you didn't place in the medal, doesn't mean your worth is any less. It just means you have to try harder, and absolutely try harder. Go. If you don't give it your all, then there's nobody to blame except for you in some ways, because you can still try really hard, Koji, and you can't get to that next level.
Yeah.
You have to sometimes change your environment or your people, at least in my experience, from just a general work experience, you have different ceilings that you can hit. I think as an Asian American, as an Asian American male, as an Asian American woman, as someone from an immigrant community or POC community, I think there's things that you can try all that you want in some systems. And so then I think it's breaking out of those systems too.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the challenges being a parent, is that, putting my dreams on my kid, and, I don't care what he does as long as he loves it. And that a lot of times I have to step back and be like, it's not what I love and what I want him to do. It's like, because I love baseball, and, I played baseball and I want him to play baseball, and he's really good at it. But I know that when I look at him, I know he doesn't love it like I loved it. And that's really hard for me, because I want to push him. And I know he's a better baseball player than I was at his age. But, it's hard. That's the hardest part, I think. And I tell him that all the time, that it's not my dream, it's your dream. It's your life you have to live. And, I think part of that, like, giving it your all, is that it has to be something you want to do, that you yourself want to do. And I think even if there are barriers, that's how barriers are broken, is when those people who are doing what they want to do and what they should be doing, do it. I think it's you give up earlier when it's like, oh, my dad's forcing me to do jujitsu, then it's like, yeah, whatever. Right. It's like, then it's not really worth it.
Yeah, it's the same with my daughter. Like, it's like, I like to skate, I'm one of the old heads out there. And that kind of actually pings into one of my other advice pieces too, and, she gets on it and she can kind of go, but I try to teach her. I was like, now you need to do this. Now you need to do this. If you want to skate, this is what you have to do. And so sometimes she just wants to sit on the board, and kind of go. And so it's like, no, you said you wanted to do this. And, so yeah, I can definitely understand that. But that's kind of my thing. And I also, as a parent, like, you want to impart that, some of those things that you like, and kind of pass those down. So yeah, I mean, if she doesn't skate, when she becomes older, more so, and I'm going to take her out more to parks and, getting her pads on, different things like that. But, if she doesn't, I'll probably be a little disappointed, in some ways, but nothing to the sense of, oh, you can't come home for Christmas because you didn't go to the skate park, you get absolutely nothing, no money for you for a cat.
Yeah, that it is hard though. And, seeing that, because like in a lot of things, like for me, it's about, you see the long-term benefits of stuff, and because we've lived longer, than our children. But yeah, let's hear your another piece of advice. I'd love to hear another one.
So the second one is, experience everything you can when you can do it, because you don't know when you won't be able to do it again.
Yeah.
And I think that's like for me, that's something I think that's a little bit more in the forefront right now, just because of COVID and Corona. if you want to travel and you want to go to places, our passports are really no good anymore. Can't go to Canada, can't go to Mexico. What is it? EU is taking us away as well too.
Yeah.
If you go to maybe certain places in Asia, you'll just be quarantined for 14 days. So that's really your trip. So it's kind of, I think about that in relation to just myself, but family as well too. Like I want to take my daughter Twee, to go to just a bunch of different places and, make sure she knows, how do you get on an airplane? And so she's done that, different things like that, but how to have more experiences. And right now we can't do it. I'm going to believe, or I'm going to think that maybe it's next year, till travel truly becomes, that you really want to do it. Like if you're traveling with like 5 people and you don't want to, when are you going to do it? You can't do it right now. So I think, for our kids, I think it's just give them what you can when you can do it and have them do these things, have them try these things out. Because also too, the more experience you have with certain things, you're going to know what you truly want versus what you don't want. It's kind of like you're talking about baseball, at least kind of here it is. And you may not like it later, you may not want to do it, but at least you got exposed to it and at least you know about it.
Yeah. I have a friend in college who was kind of an asshole, and but his grandpa died, and he had a ton of money, and his grandpa basically said the only way that his grandson could get money is he had to travel for a year with only $10,000 or whatever. I don't remember how much, but it wasn't that much money. But he had to go. The stipulation was he had to go by himself. He couldn't go with anybody else, and he had to go all the way. He had to go to every place in the world, or not every place, but every continent in the world. And he had to prove it, and he had a lawyer and all these things. Anyway, he came back from that year. He didn't want to go. He wanted to stay in college and party and stuff, I remember. But he went and he took a year off. He went and he came back and he was a totally different dude. He was a way cooler dude. Everything that was important before he left was no longer important. And he kind of just had a new perspective. And it's kind of what you're saying is that, he became a better person because he now had these experiences that, he was kind of forced upon him. But, and the irony is the only reason he went before was because of the money. And then when he came back, the least important thing was actually the money. He got the money, but now it was nice to have money. Obviously it's always nice to have money, but Absolutely. It was no longer about the money. It was about he had totally changed majors. He became, a totally different person. And I always think about that in terms of experiences because, I think that if we're in our bubble, it's you get kind of myopic about the world around you and what's reality and what's not reality, and just being a human being. Right. And I don't know when we're going to travel internationally. We're going on a road trip, but even a road trip, I'm always cautious because I'm going to wear a mask and I'm Asian and, and there's going to be places that even just wearing a mask is questionable, but then being an Asian who wears masks is going to be even more questionable. So, I'm going to have to be a lot more vigilant about who's around me, what they're saying or what they're doing or how they're looking at me and kind of making sure that we're safe, in ways that is different. Even a year ago, I'd be, there are places that I'm not going to be super comfortable in, but I wouldn't be afraid. They'd probably think I'm just some tourist from Asia. And but now they think I'm going to be some disease carrying person coming to their midst. So yeah, things have totally changed. So let me hear your third piece of advice.
Third piece of advice is, and I like a few. So this is, I think I'll choose this one. So know your heritage and culture because tradition is something that you can lean on later in your life. I think that's important. I think as much as you may know or don't know or have or practice from a cultural experience, I think it just helps because it kind of puts some of these, I don't necessarily want to say guardrails, but you have something to truly kind of go back on and lean on and say, oh, I can look at this and I can take some of these things kind of from my culture and from my heritage and whatever that is. And maybe it's one, maybe it's another, maybe it's, a mixed set of different cultural identities. Yeah. But I think having those, knowing those and ingraining those, within children, within, your kids later on, or, as they're younger in their formative years, only helps. And I think you can kind of grow on that as well too. Like you may not do everything. Like maybe you don't do all these different things. So for instance, I'll do some things for Tet, for the Vietnamese New Year, but I may not do everything, or I may not do everything that, maybe they do in Vietnam or maybe they do in other portions. But I think it's important to know some of these things. And it just kind of and to experience them versus maybe not doing them and not experiencing them. I just think that that's a part of that foundation in addition to your family and to your parents that, you can kind of lean on in certain ways.
Yeah. And I think it's important to know where you're from and know who you are. And it's a good grounding. I mean, I think the worst, I don't know if this is controversial, but the worst Asians are the ones who think they're not Asian, right? And they walk around and thinking that they're basically white people. And it's like, dude, you're not white. It's, you're not white at all. And it's, and I think that a lot of the issues with what in our history with, in this country with African-Americans is because they were stolen from their land and they lost their culture, they lost their language, they lost their religion, they lost everything. And then we suddenly expect them to have to be like a strong community, after being slaves for 400 years and losing everything, and I think that there's a reason why, the country's fucked up in the way it is now. And I think as Asians, obviously we don't have that experience. So I think, and you're right in that's what allows Asian Pacific Islanders to have an advantage is because, we do have that culture to lean back on and to learn from. Although I would argue that I think our kids probably would relate more to being Asian American or Asian Pacific Islander American than our ethnic specific in our generation, just because, I think that like my son probably has more in common with your daughter, than somebody in Japan because of,
yeah, absolutely.
Right. And I think that's a different word with us. I think it was much more like, I probably have a lot more, I don't share a lot with my Korean American, people of my cohort or Chinese American, Taiwanese, just because we were, our grandparents hated each other still, but or our parents hated each other still. But
there's still that piece there.
But there's also just the idea that, we were so generationally, we're still so different. But I think that our kids are they're much more American now, right? I mean, they're a lot less Vietnamese or Japanese or anything, right? And so when they look I like to, I try to show my son all the Asian American stuff and Japanese things, just to kind of get him that, I always tell him we're on the same team. We're all all the Asians are on the same team. And so we need to stick together, that all these different, I mean, obviously Japan did terrible things and I would never say that, but but I think that it's in America, we're all on the same team and we're, there's an interest for us to be together and be one than to split up into our little groups, because especially Japanese, we're so small as a group, that it doesn't really make sense. It makes more sense. And plus I think I share more in common with Chinese Americans, Korean Americans, Vietnamese Americans, whoever, than I do with other people anyway, and plus at the end of the day, I don't think white people will care if we're, if we're Vietnamese or Japanese or whatever. They're just whatever racist thing that's happening now, whether it's the China virus in quotes or whatever, the stealing the cars.
Virus,
yeah, in quotes. Yeah.
Right. Stealing jobs, different things like that.
Yeah.
I do think that there's I think that one of the things that we've seen, within George Floyd and, and kind of the movements that we've been seeing in the protests has been, more people from different communities coming together, which I do like to see.
Yeah.
I think, at the same time, you still really have just really dumb, ignorant, racist white people who are, who just still have these attitudes. And at the same time, too, the thing that I've been seeing a lot more is just liberal people, who are white and non-POC, non-immigrant, in those kind of ways, too. It's just they try to, I would say, do the right thing, but they can't always do it. Yeah. They don't always kind of get it. They're kind of that racism that maybe they didn't understand, and maybe we'll use racial bias, in some ways, and maybe they didn't know about, or they didn't think to know about, or they didn't totally really accept that they were a part of.
Yeah.
You see that more, and to me, sometimes that's just more infuriating. And I think like you said too, you have to be more vigilant and you have to be a little careful where you go or what you do. In some ways, when you're kind of wearing a mask and different things, and too, it's just I feel like you just say and speak up, and depending upon who you're with, like you don't want to get into it when your family's around, or
Yeah.
your kids with you all the time, and there's some heavy stuff going on. But at the same time, I think it's more than fine to break out whatever you want in those types of situations, because then you have to show your kids that too as well. And then I think there's something to be said for just not caring in a way too, maybe not being as vigilant, and just saying, what, I'm here, I don't need your permission to be here. I don't need your permission to do what I'm doing. It's, just like all the different videos that we're seeing, from both the African American community and the Asian American community, and you get, different folks that are like, you can't do this, you can't be here.
Yeah.
Why are you going down this trail to get back to your car? Things like that.
Yeah.
You're breaking laws because you're Asian and you're here. And, it's just kind of like,
Although I will say that's easier.
When,
like the problem is when I have my kid, I'm trying to like not get in fights and trying not to like, I don't want to cause a situation because I just don't want anything bad with my son. If it was by myself, then sure, for sure, it's always going to be a different situation, But I'm always surprised when I watch those videos where like the people attack them back, and it's like, well, what did you expect? Like, there's this really famous one that came out of Sacramento. I don't know if you saw it. It's with the African American woman and this older Caucasian woman, and this older Caucasian woman called her the N-word. And then like kept calling her the N-word, and then the African American woman was not having it, and then she's like, call it to me one more time, and then she did, and this woman just hit her in the face so hard and just knocked her down and just kept hitting her, and you're just like, what did you like when she told you to your face, like, just like you that's gonna end badly. You have to just be like, hey, I'm sorry, like that was, I don't know why you would use that word in the first place, but I'm sorry and let's move on. But clearly that person did not learn that lesson. And yeah, I agree with you a lot. Like the most infuriating thing is the people who don't think that they're a racist and who secretly are. I always say it's like showing people, like teaching a bird about air for a lot of people. It's like, it's impossible to understand. But that's why, for my son, and I think people of color, I think it is important that we talk about, like for example, I was walking with my son this morning after a run in a neighborhood that was super quiet and it was a wealthy neighborhood. And I was like, hey, look, if we were Black, we couldn't do this. Like we couldn't be walking through this neighborhood at 6 o'clock in the morning because we're going to get stopped. And that's important to know. And we're not going to get stopped because we're Asian, but that doesn't mean that that's okay. We have to know, we have to understand that, like that's the world we live in. That, even if a neighbor looks at the house at us, they're not going to automatically assume that we're going to be robbing the house or breaking into cars or whatever other shit that people think. And I think that's important because, as an Asian American, a lot of the stereotypes are quote positive, but we know that they're not, right? Ultimately, like even though like they think we're smart and good, but they put us in a ceiling, right? That we can't become leaders, right? We're not leaders because we're Asians. We're followers. We're good worker bees, but not leader bees or whatever, right? The queen.
But don't let us lead the ship and architect it out and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
oh,
go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say no. Yeah, just absolutely. I think you have to like think about that, and our daughter, and other kids, we just kind of, they're fairly like, they become just the older that they get, just they understand more about race, more about being Asian American. And I think one of those things too is, I think geographically too, it makes a difference where you are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We have not had the history of the African American community, for Black individuals. At the same time, being from communities of color, we share these inequities, that other communities can too as well. And, I think, depending like in certain areas in the Midwest, like, they will, if you're just not white, depending upon where you are, they might just automatically assume you shouldn't be there and you're, to no good. But I've also found that in other areas that I've visited as well too, as much as we think about the coast, I've just experienced like just a lot of racism on the coast. When I've gone out there, like California, East Coast, like all the different things. And it's just like, to me, it's just a little bit different, in the Midwest. But, I think you have to look at the communities where you are and what are the populations there.
For sure.
And to kind of have that, it's just, you'll see people and they'll just some of the same things, with Asian Americans, depending upon who you are. And those are some of the stereotypes that, I heard growing up from different people in the white community, I came out of Vietnam. I was a war orphan there. And then I got adopted into a family in the United States, which is kind of also like an adopted family and a sponsor family, kind of in different sorts of ways. And it's just, seeing those networks, seeing those different things and how they work.
Yeah.
It's just, it's if you're not white, and they may not say it, but it's just like I think it's like colorism in different ways too as well.
No,
It's like, what's the hierarchy?
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, let's hear your next piece of advice.
All right, next piece of advice is, I'll just pick one. Don't marry the first person you sleep with.
That's the best advice I ever heard. That funny thing is that has not been on the show yet. So I love that advice. Why do you think that?
I think it kind of goes back to some of the other pieces of advice of experience. Have the most number of experiences I feel that you can, because then you're going to know what you like and what you don't like. In the first person I think that you meet and that you have sex with, yeah, you're going to feel like, oh, wow, this is so great. And I really like it. It's great. And, depending upon the type of person you are, maybe you're romantic, you just want to fall in love and, have that love and that relationship. But relationships take time. Throughout time, they can change. And I think I truly believe this. If you've only had sex with like one or two people or three people in your life, nothing again, like this is for me personally, I feel like you should have more experiences and you should get all of the wants and the needs in that sort of way when you can and when you're younger, or and that could be maybe not just younger, but wherever you are in that stage of life, before you get truly committed. Because I think some of the reason why certain things don't work out is for a number of different reasons. But I think one of them also is just that, they want things that they never had before.
Yeah.
And they have this yearning and this thing. And I think if you yearn for something, and you're committed, you're in a marriage, it will be, I think sometimes it can be tough for you. I think it'll change as you get older. You may not need to do everything and do all these different things. Like, I think when you're young, you're kind of like, oh, I'm so virile and all this other different stuff. And I'm just going to kick it the whole night. And then, you get older and you're kind of like, oh, wait, I need to do some other stuff as well too.
Yeah.
So I think it changes.
I'm gonna flip the script on yours and say it's also that you don't want a partner that you're the first for that partner either, because I think it's the same thing. Because if you're with somebody that's never been with other people, that yearning, that wanting to see what the world is like outside of you is going to come out at some point. And also just like speaking from personal experience, when I'm with women who have not like slept around a lot, but just had like experiences, they tend to be more comfortable in sex, in their bodies and who they are, and they know what they like and they can tell me. Whereas a lot of times when I've been with, when I was younger, obviously, when I was been with women that didn't have experience, they're more nervous. They're like, it's not as fun because they don't really know their bodies in that way yet. And I think that, it's fun when you're like 18, but that ceases to be fun when you're like 40, and I think you're right. I think it goes both ways for both sides. Just because I think that you want somebody with experience who knows who they are. And it's just like, but it's also, I think, in relationships as well. If you're with somebody that's been in a bunch of relationships, they've had great moments and they've also had shitty moments. And I think having somebody who has had both of those is important to understand what a relationship is. I think I was dating this woman for like 10 years and everything was like up and down all the time. And, I thought, because I'd been with her for so long, I thought that was relationships until I talked to my cousin who told me like that, who's older than me, who's like, that's not love. And I didn't know it because it's all I knew at the time was this person. And so knowing that, it really helped me understand and helped me grow and change. But yeah, that's really great advice. This is going to be the clip for this podcast. I'm really excited. Thank you. But let me hear your last piece of advice.
So my last piece of advice is that, keep doing the things you loved to do when you were younger or at specific stages in your life. I think because, those are going to be things that you enjoy, that you have fun. Don't let other kind of people tell you that, oh, you know what, you're too old for this, or you shouldn't be doing this, or, you know, what, you know, why would you, didn't you grow out of this? You
Like
know,
skateboarding?
yeah, absolutely. Like skateboarding, or just like, you know, it's like, why, you know, why do you want to go play pickup basketball or something all the time? You know what I mean? But I think it's different. I think it's different for different sports. I think it's different for different things that you liked to do. Um, and and I think I think that's an important piece of advice, because as you get older, you can kind of go back to those things. And it might be something too where people say, you know, maybe it's photography. You know, I've always been in dark rooms and, you know, been around people with cameras or had cameras or different things like that. And it might be something where, you know, people are like, you know, well, why are you getting into this again for some odd reason, right? Or your friends or things like that. If they say, you know, well, you haven't touched that in like years or something, you know, it, and I think that kind of blends into another piece, which is just kind of, you know, be yourself, you know, don't know yourself as best as you can. And I think it all goes back to those experiences, you know, because you're really the only one that's going to make you truly happy. Obviously, your family, you know, your friends and the
Mhm.
close people around you, but they're going to support you, you know, if you're doing what you want to do. And if you kind of make that known as well. And I think that's really important versus trying to fit yourself into a specific shape or a specific perspective, you
Yeah.
know, of other people.
Yeah. And I'm going to tag on to your advice and say, you know, conversely, for your job, don't do something for the money. Do it for the, you know, like, love is cliche, but do something that you enjoy, you truly enjoy, because money, you know, the one thing I always share with people is my stepfather has this property where they have this taco truck that's really famous out here in Pasadena. It's been here for like 20 years, but they make $10,000 on a weekend night, net. You know, none of them went to college, and they make 20 grand a weekend, 30 grand a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Sunday. I mean, back when, you know, people were
Yep.
out and stuff. But, you know, they didn't go to college, and they're able to make money. You know, you could be a plumber and make money. You know, there's my local police officers are making over six digit, you know, six figures right now. So money is not the issue. So, you know, if you're doing it, you should be doing it because it's something you truly enjoy, you know. And if it's money, then you should just be a plumber, because that's always my piece of advice. Everyone's going to always need plumbing for the rest. Even when AI comes out, plumbing is still something that's going to have to happen, right? Nobody's going to defund the plumbers. And when your toilet's stuck, or your sink is clogged, or something's smelly in your house, you're going to have to call somebody, and these people make a ton of money, you know, if you're good at your job. But yeah, I do think that that's really, really important. And as a father, one of the things that I try to do is I try to expose my son to as many things as possible to see which one he likes,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and to push him to kind of do it. Because like jujitsu, for example, something he could do the rest of his life, whether he's competing or not, right? And to your point too, like, I didn't do jujitsu as a kid. I did kendo, but now I do jujitsu. And for me, you know, people always ask me, like, because I get hurt all the time because I'm old and I'm fighting these young guys. But to me, it's like, it's so much fun. And it's like, I don't remember, you know, and I have black eyes and I have all these, like, I'm getting in fights, like, oh, I'm not real fights, but I'm sparring. And when I walk away, it's like, I just didn't have fun. And like doing this is so much fun for me. And it makes my life so much more enjoyable to live every single day. Like, you know, it's like something like jujitsu. I'll share a quick story. You know, when, like, for example, if I'm having a bad day, and then I'm just sad or angry or something's going on, and then I go on the mat, I can't think about how sad or angry I am. I just do the match, because if I'm thinking about that, I'm going to get my ass kicked. And so, and then by the end of the fight and the end of the practice, the training, I'm not thinking about what made me angry and sad anymore. I've kind of moved on, and I have a new perspective. And I think that that's the difference between me pre-jiu-jitsu and post-jiu-jitsu, is that very thing of, you know, doing something that I love, that makes myself more enjoyable. And to your point, I wish I was doing things that I did as a kid, but everything I did as a kid is hard to do as an adult. So I did baseball, which is difficult, because I can't get 18 people to come out and play with me. And kendo is Japanese sword fighting, which I don't really like to do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I do think having something that like surfers, for example, are usually awesome people, because it's very zen, right? You're just sitting on your board and you're just waiting for a wave, and that's kind of your personality. But I think skaters are like that too, because, you know, you're out by yourself, you're just doing things and you're having fun and you're doing your thing. But
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think too, just a quick thing, from a skate kind of standpoint, it's like, um, yeah, it's just good people, and you fail a lot and you have to learn to keep on trying again.
Yeah.
And kind of to that point too, it's like, I don't know if goes up. Like I broke my wrist and so I have this big scar,
Yeah.
and it's like it's like 2 bolts and like 9 pins.
Wow.
And it's like I broke my wrist, trying to do this gap, and it was after my daughter got born, and so I'm just like I'm I only have one arm, for a little bit, but it's keep on doing it. The next couple seasons, of skate, and especially about Midwest, you can only skate so much, or you got to go to an indoor park, something like that. Then it was just kind of flat land. But like you said, when you're trying to do a trick, when you're trying to do something that you want to do, it's just you can't be thinking about anything else. You have to think about that, and you may be a little bit more bruised, you may not bounce back, versus when you fall, you just you just go down and you don't always bounce back. But it's something that if you love to do whatever that is, you're going to get enjoyment about that. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think as an adult, you do forget to have fun. You forget to do things for yourself, especially as a parent. It's like I'm driving him around, I'm picking him up, I'm like setting up appointments, and then between those, I'm trying to get my own work done, or trying to take meetings and doing all this stuff. And I think that, like having something where I enjoy myself, and actively not having to think of work has been that thing. And before, actually funny, I've had Laker tickets for a while, and I thought Laker games were that, but I realized, Laker games aren't that, because I just sit there and watch something and I'm still thinking about everything because I'm just passively watching something. But jiu-jitsu was that thing that really allowed me to be like, all right, I don't have to think, I don't have to work, and I could just fight. And like skateboarding, I mean, as a jiu-jitsu guy, I'm not good at it, so everyone kicks the shit out of me. And so they're choking me, they're like putting me in headlocks or chokes and other painful things. And it's just very humbling to get my ass kicked by little people who are just better than me. Like if my son was my weight, he'd beat me because he's good.
He's that good.
He would be. I mean, yeah, he's like, a funny story now is that during COVID, so we still train. We still maybe have mats and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we were sparring. Me and him were sparring, and later, I was like not doing. I mean, he was actually beating me, and he thinks that I'm joking around, that I'm still allowing him to beat me, But my wife later was like, "You were trying, weren't you?" I was like, "Yeah, I was trying really hard. That I was trying, I was actually trying not to lose. I was trying to beat him." And that's crazy, because before I could just, do whatever I wanted to him and it'd be like game over. But this is the first time that I had to actually try. Ultimately I'm stronger, so I could just, if I really wanted to, I could just, take him down. But just from from an actual just doing it, I couldn't beat him. There's 0% chance that I could beat him. His instincts are better. His techniques are better than mine. He knows what to do like a second before I know what I'm supposed to be doing.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, he's pretty good at it. He's actually really good at it. He's way too good for me. So
I like seeing that as a parent. You get to see these things where your kids they're kind of a little bit better. And I'm not always great with groupings for some odd reason, groupings of animals or different things like that. I'm like, is alligator? I don't know, it's a crocodile or something like that. And then my daughter will correct me. She'll be like, that's a crocodile. Yeah. Or, that's something else, like a sheep. I was like, oh yeah, you're right, that's a sheep versus whatever the hell I called it.
Yeah.
And so
and I think that, to me, that's one of the big differences between being Asian American and being like my mom was Asian, right, from Japan. And I think that was the big difference, is that when I make a mistake, I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know everything, to my son. And I think that's reality, because I don't know everything. Whereas with my mom or my parents, it's like they would never in a million years admit to me that they didn't know everything, right? That even if they didn't clearly know everything because they're not American in the way we're American,
yep.
They would that's just a different perspective, right? It's just
yeah, no, it's that kind of authoritative kind of perspective and that sort of way. And I got that as well. Just as, no, it's just this, it's this and this, and this is what you have to do. And I was like, but you don't know. You've only been here for, so long, in a funny sort of way. You learned English from soap operas. Are you sure? Just those in-house kind of funny things. So.
Yeah. But these kids, I'll leave it on this. We're going to finish up soon, but I think our kids, especially when I find people with kids about my generation or my son's generation, that I've been reading this book called 4-Generation Cycle. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not.
It's how this sociologist basically went back and has looked at American history and has found that that America runs in these 4-generation cycles, and that the 4th generation is always this amazing generation that changes the world. So the 4th generation, the original 4th generation was the 1776 generation. The next 4th generation was Civil War. The next one was the Greatest Generation, the World War II generation. And then the 4th generation is our kids. And so that these kids are like, I really truly believe these kids are going to change the world. And the only issue though is that that usually in all 4 of those situations are marked by major war, major problems, right? But in all 4 cases, they've completely changed the trajectory of not just American history, but world history, right? The American Revolution, Civil War, even World War II. But these kids, I think, are the future in ways that we're not. So hopefully they could fix a lot of these problems. And that's one of the reasons why I want to do this podcast, is for us to be able to, for us who are in a different generation, to be able to pass some stuff on to our kids in the future, for them to hear this stuff and to be able to say, because even though we're not the greatest generation, we do have some advice. We have some things that we know that they might not know. But I really truly believe that these kids are going to be the greatest generation, and a lot of these problems that we're having are going to be solved. Hopefully, or not solved, but at least addressed in ways that we've unfortunately failed, from global warming to racism to everything else that we're dealing with.
Yeah, economic disparity and equity. And I think they're growing up in such a different time. They're going to view it a little differently, in how they're growing up. It's just, it'll be interesting. So I hope that that's true.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, like the classic examples, I was in the podcast before, I was talking about how, we used to beat up, I didn't beat up kids, but beat up like if you're gay, like you got beat up, or being gay was a slur. And now kids like that, like most kids don't care, right? Being gay marriage is not a big issue to these kids, right? Because it just is what it is. Even being transgender is what it is. Like there was a transgender kid in my son's preschool, and nobody batted an eye about it. Whereas, that kid, when we were kids, probably wouldn't survive that long in school, right? And just in terms of being, even by the teachers would be heckled, right? It would be even by not just the kids, but the teachers. And the last thing I'll say is that I'm in 7th grade, Mrs. I forget her name, but in 7th grade, I was a terrible bully. I beat up kids. I made fun of kids. I was a terrible person. But the one teacher that really left something with me, which she said homophobia is not attractive. And the only thing I remember from 7th grade was her telling me that. And even if it's it took me a long time to get there, I totally went later in life, I mean, I never actually beat up anybody for being gay, but I think I used the word, bad words around being gay, but it really stuck with me, this idea that, that somebody teaching me something, even if I wasn't ready, it really changed the trajectory of my life, and I'm still thinking about it, even if it's 7th grade was 50 million years ago. All right. Well, how can people, I mean, I don't know if you want people to follow you, but if you want people to follow you, how would they follow you, or how would they get, see what you're up to?
So they could go to, at Twitter, I think I've probably been doing a little bit more kind of tweets these days, rather than long form blog posts. So, they could go on to Slaniopolis. So I'm posting a lot of pictures, kind of different things, kind of out there. They can always, I'm going to start doing some writing for ASAM News. Okay. So I'll kind of do some things out there, and they just have a great, site, a great, mission on what they want to do. So I'd say kind of go out there as well too. Outside of that, I just blog around here and there. So, nothing else, I think. Hit up the Twitter if you want to. And outside of that, if you're out in the Twin Cities and you happen to see me, watch this podcast, recognize my face, feel free to say hi.
Definitely will. And for everybody, I'll put Adam's Twitter account on the show notes. So if you're interested, you can just click on that and you can subscribe, or I don't even know what it is. Is it subscribe on Twitter? Follow, I guess, is the correct term.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And for everybody listening, please rate, review, subscribe to this podcast. This is a labor of love. This is truly my labor of love. If you're interested, I have 2 other podcasts, Best or Worst Pod with Martin Mapoma. We ask people about the best or worst day. And the other one is Midnight Watchers with Jennifer Field and Quentin Lee, where we review these crazy midnight horror movies that I totally don't enjoy, but the other 2 enjoy it a lot. So I'm the person who doesn't like any of these movies that I'm forced to watch for the most part. But thank you so much again, Adam. Thank you everybody for listening. Bye.